Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show. Josh, welcome to the Principal Podcast. Happy to have you.
Appreciate you having me on.
It is my pleasure. Let's jump straight into it. What is the story, Josh? What got you into professional services?
Well, I think getting into professional services, prior to MB&A, I'd had a management consulting business. I kind of seen the same challenges propping up time and time again. That's what kind of got us started, was developing what we called accelerators around those specific types of challenges. And that kind of drove downstream this idea that, even more so than having really great spreadsheets, maybe we should have some software that went along with them that made it even easier, gave us more predictable buying patterns, ability to satisfy customer constraints, that kind of thing. And it, kind of turned me towards not just professional services, but professional services that had a software component to them.
So all that leading to what? What is the problem that you're solving now? Or more should I say, what is the outcome that you help them achieve?
So, a little bit longer story than, today, what we solve today is a lot different than what we thought we were going to be solving 15 years ago when we got this started. And I think that, there's a little bit of being smart, and there's a little bit of luck, and there's a little bit of the market finding you and you finding the market. And so today, the vast majority of our business is focused around inspections, audits, compliance, work order management, facilities management. The reason that we're so good at that is because we didn't start out in that space. We started out, my management consulting background was around helping large organizations look at their IT portfolios and optimize them for cost and efficiency. And I thought, man, there's a real software product in this. We need a really flexible way to collect this information. And if we can get it in, this is where it all comes together for all the other things that drive efficiency in these large IT organizations. The challenge was it was really hard to sell it to people because it was kind of like, there wasn't a recurring pattern to it. We got kind of lucky. We had I was pitching to a group in DC, bunch of CIOs, typical IT executives. There was a guy in the back that was more operationally focused, and he came up afterwards and was like, hey, I didn't follow all of that, but I have a huge data collection challenge. I've got 900 buildings that I manage, and I need, I've got all these work orders, all these other things. Could you help me take a look at that? We had a few clients, but we didn't have a lot of clients in our core business at the time. So I said, yeah, I can take a look at that. The maturity in that industry really wasn't where it is today. And the flexibility that we built into the software from the beginning really was a huge benefit in serving that marketplace. And so we kind of started working with those guys, and then we said, well, maybe we'll reach out to a couple other places that look a little bit like this. And we were amazed. It was like, oh yeah, we love this, and that's kind of how our business got built. We sort of, the market found us. We didn't find the market. I wish I could say I was smart enough to have figured out there was a gap there. I wasn't, but I was smart enough when the market found me to, not close the door on them.
If you ask me, there is something very smart about positioning yourself in a way that makes the market find you. So, if anything, that is what ended up happening.
Take the win.
What's that market, Josh? Who is it that you service specifically? Who do you end up working with mainly?
Well, so it's a lot different than when we were looking at those large IT portfolios. We worked with CIOs and CTOs and people like that, and that's really not our core customer. We may eventually talk to those guys in the process because they may need to approve things or make sure that we're secure and all the things. But we're oftentimes reaching directly out to the people that are in the field having the problem. If that's in the public housing market, that's executive directors. If it's in like food safety. That's probably program directors for specific programs that service food safety, construction safety managers, environmental health and safety managers. It's really the people, those people have real problems that they're trying to solve. And because of the way we've positioned and because we've kind of specialized, we're able to talk in their language. And then they carry the banner for us forward up to the, their technology organizations and say, hey, I don't know if this fits our, what your vision is for IT, but I know it solves our problem.
How did you make that happen? Like getting the market to find you when you're much more focused on a problem than a person or a CIO, CTO of a specific industry, right? When you're like, hey, if you're like that, then this is for you. But much more like, hey, anybody out there, if you have this specific problem, then we might be able to help, and then let them come inbound. What has worked for you to achieve that, Josh?
It's a really great question, and it's one that I would say we did not do a very good job of for probably the first 10 years we were in business. A lot of our business, especially in that first 10 years, was referrals, and we'd been successful for somebody, and so they'd say, hey, to the program that was adjacent to them, these guys are really great, they solved our problem. In the last 5 years, it's gotten a lot better in terms of we brought in some staff that I'd always, because I came from a development background, skewed heavily towards technology people. And to be honest, the fun part of the business for me was always the building the technology. And, I liked talking to the customers and helping them solve their problems, but I wasn't, somebody that was going to go to an event and shake 200 hands. And so we onboarded a COO that had sales and marketing as kind of in his portfolio, but had a lot of professional experience in professionalizing sales organizations. And he kind of interviewed me, and like in terms that I could understand that weren't super sales speak. He walked me through like, well, how do you think of an ideal customer, and how do you and he took that and said, well, look, we're spending here's how we spend our time today, and it was kind of really broad. To your point, like hey, we do these high level things. How does anyone ever find you? Well, they weren't. They only found us if we got referred to them. He said, well, look, let's crystallize our message around some of these. Let's take the case studies that we have that say this is a market we do really well, and let's put in their language. Let's go out to those folks. Let's go do the events that they're at. Let's do webinars that are educational, that are maybe not just buy my product, but here's how we help solve a broader set of the problem. And then, kind of the traditional messaging and outbound that most companies do, right? But a lot more tailored than what we've done previously. We had a tendency to talk in techno speak and say things like, data collection and, extensible assessments, and nobody knows what that means, right? Like even internally, it takes a few months for people to understand what all that means. But, when you talk to somebody about, here's how we take your inspection, help you identify the deficiencies, put those deficiencies onto a work order, pull assets out of your warehouse, get them on a truck, get them delivered, show that you did the work. Oh, okay. They understand that, right? We don't service a technology first marketplace for the most part. And so if you can't speak their language, you will not be successful. And I think that was one of the biggest things. I can't take a lot of credit for that because I didn't do it. But as going through that interview process and kind of discovering what our customers really looked like, and then being much more focused on speaking their language, and finding them where they lived.
So it sounds like a lot of reflection around positioning, right? And then going where your customers are. So you mentioned the webinar, which I like. I also see that you guys have or had a podcast. Like, was that part of it? How did you think about all that?
Yeah, that was a little bit of it. And I think in some ways, to be honest, I think that podcast was, it was somewhat useful in addressing kind of external customers, really useful for internal customers, meaning, the people that do implementation work, delivery. And that was another challenge, right? As we got a little bit bigger, trying to reduce the time to value that it took for somebody to kind of understand. Maybe you came in here as somebody that had really deep technology chops, explaining to them the marketplace that we serve, the need to be able to communicate in customer terms, getting them up to speed on the types of customers and use cases we have. That's a big part of the value delivery, is that we do we kind of marry the management consulting stuff that I've done previously, where we'd come in and we'd really get deeply immersed in the customer's delivery model and what they did. And that's what, drove the value that we could help them create. And we've tried to say, okay, we're going to shrink the aperture of customers that we solve problems for quite a bit. And we're going to have everybody in this company be really deeply versed in helping solve those kind of challenges. I say whenever I'm interviewing somebody, I say, look, if you're not somebody who thinks it's interesting to learn about and really deeply learn about these customers, and I'll talk about a few of them, you're just not going to be successful here, right? It's just our value prop is too closely tied to what the customer actually delivers. You can't be successful as a pure technical person.
Would you say it's easier to teach a marketing branding person the technical part of it, or would you say it's easier to teach a technical person the marketing and brand part of it?
Well, I think it's hard both directions, right? And it's really dependent on the person and the desire, and willingness to sit through it. And also, to be honest, a lot of it is how you frame it. I've learned an awful lot over especially the last 10 years, in just trying to be, better at coaching, better at communicating, and being a lot more persistent in the communications. So we started a while back. You brought up the podcast, but one of the other things that we do internally is I do a weekly email, and it that goes out to different groups within our organization that's focused on how we do business specifically. I always say there's best practice, which is what everyone agrees is the right way to do something. And there's good practice, which is what actually works for your individual organization. And so, that was really an attempt to scale the kinds of one-to-one communications or 1 to 5 communications that I was having on a weekly basis, and say, man, I feel like I'm teaching the same things over and over. There's got to be a better way to do this. And so that became a newsletter, which then some smart person in our organization turned into, kind of an AI Josh that you could go in and ask questions of. That part of, trying to, encapsulate all the things that make a difference for your organization and get them out more broadly. That's been a big part of our growth.
How do you lead all this to a closed deal, Josh? How do you go from this thought leadership, speaking the language of your customers, being where they are, to a conversation, a sales conversation, an SOW, a letter of engagement, we rock and roll? What does sales motion look like in your world?
So it's split. We do because of the nature of inspections, audits, and compliance, there's a fair amount of public sector work. So think federal, state, and local. And that sales motion is long and hard and takes a long time, right? If you're really doing it well, 18 months from like a net new, they've never heard of you, to maybe closing a sale. In commercial, 30 to 45 days. And it's really the same process, just fewer gates, and the ability to move a little bit faster. But I think the same tenets exist no matter what you're doing, right? So and you'll hear me say this time over and over again, which is the first thing that we try to do when somebody comes back to us is spend more time. We'll do a discovery call like a lot of folks do. Try to do more. I would say, look, if you spend 70% of the time telling them about our software and 30% of the time listening to what their problem is, we're not going to close it, right? Flip that ratio. Spend 70% of the time listening and 30% of the time helping them solve the problem. Get yourself out of the I have to sell the software space and into the I have to help them solve the problem. And that will typically carry you to a place where you know enough about the customer. We do a lot of tell us what your problem is, let us come back and show you what an example is. And that's, when I talked earlier about, the flexibility of the software and some of the things that we built early on that we didn't really know were going to be differentiators, but became huge differentiators. That one of the biggest things that we've been able to do consistently for a lot of years is be able to move from a first call where we get the customer challenge or pain point to a second call where we show them maybe not, hey, here's a finished solution, but here's enough for you to believe it's real. Had probably 2014, 2015, we were pitching a very large municipal education organization, and it was in environmental health and safety, and they had this massive set of forms, and they said, well, this is what we're trying, this is what we fill this out in paper right now, and then we come in and we hand punch it into spreadsheets. And I was like, oh, wow, geez, that doesn't sound great. So they said, if you could show us this, come back and tell us how long it would take. And I could tell they thought a long time. I said, well, how about I come back tomorrow and I show it to you? Like, you think you can do that? I will say, stayed up all night, but we pulled it together. And it's not like we showed them like an end-to-end process. We just showed them that we could pull it. They could pull it up in the mobile app and get to identifying deficiencies based on their environmental health and safety standards. But it was such a big proof point for them because they thought of this. Everything that had been pitched to them prior was, we show them this stuff, and maybe they come back in 2 or 3 weeks, and they show us like a little bit of it. And we did the whole thing, had the report, and they bought it, And I think that's, so there's kind of the confluence of getting the problem statement out in a way that, you can solve it, having the right capability in place so that you can turn it around pretty quickly, generate the proof and confidence with the customer that you're going to be able to solve their problem. That really compresses deal timelines, right? It reduces their risk. They can see that you've got something tangible. They start thinking about how quickly can I get this on board to solve my problem, instead of, man, do I really think they're going to be able to do it? How much is it going to cost? That kind of thing.
One thing that I want to piggyback on here, Josh, which I think is so good, is speed. Even if that makes you stay up all night from time to time. So not everybody is prepared to do that, which is all right. Of course, you should do whatever you feel like doing. But there is this Harvard study that my mentor talks about a lot, which is if you get back to your leads within 1 minute of them opting in, you increase your sales, not like sales conversations, your sales by 380+%. So like you have a 4x at your disposal if you're not getting back to your leads within 1 minute. So where in B2B, obviously sales cycles are a bit long, leads come from different entry points, not necessarily ads, but point being, speed in sales process is gold, quite literally. And I think what you just broke down here explains that. And I think that's very valuable for the people listening to us, because we tend to think of long sales cycles, and as in it's okay to come back within 24 hours or within 48, but just acknowledging receipts and like being on top of things, that requires a bit more like, day-to-day management. Super valuable. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, it's funny that like what you just brought up, because we have consistently, you mentioned you hit all the problems, right? The leads come in from a bunch of different places. You want to get back in touch as soon as possible, but you want to have a differentiated response that doesn't look like it was an autoresponder. And so the more that you're able to compress that, the more that you're able to hit it while it's top of mind, the better off you're going to be. And that has been a huge focus. I mean, for as long as Alex has been in here as our COO running it, and he's like, look, sales guys, you want to hit your numbers. The quicker you get back to somebody, if you can get back to them while they're thinking about it, you will close.
It is as simple as that. Sorry, we got a bit cut off here. Love this. Talk to me about what happens next, Josh. So we close a deal, and then what? How do you think about retention? And not retention as in, hey, let's make the most out of each and every client, but more, how do we keep on bringing value? How do we identify the next problem that we can solve, and the next one, and the next one, to optimize client retention? How do you guys think about this?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that we've been really fortunate. Some of it is you look at like our website is MB&A outcomes, right? And we talk about getting customers to the outcomes that they need. And so I think one of the things while you're doing whatever the gap is between selling them the software and getting them to go live, a lot of your future retention happens right there, right? Your ability to listen during that process, adjust fire if you need to get them to success, not just to whatever the contract says that you were, we have had a tendency to sacrifice early services dollars for customer success, because that customer success is what leads to customer retention. And then really focus on the onboarding process. So we found that customers that can self-service typically don't provide as much services revenue downstream, but they don't ever attrit. They're there forever, right? And so the more time that you can spend early on, every hour that you invest with them, you're building relationships, and you're also building the skills that are going to make them successful over the longer arc of time. And then, like many other software companies, right? Like we try to have a steady stream of information that they get that provides them the opportunity to raise any issues that they have. We have a steady set of touch points with defined customer service representatives that ensure that they don't have to push problems to us. We're actively looking to pull those problems in and solve them. And then we have a really clear, so our customer support and customer success are linked at the hip. They actually sit underneath the same organization. And so we always talk about it like kind of the Sherpa model. Like you're not just there to solve that problem today. You're there to get your customer up the mountain to success. And so to the degree that is possible, you will have the same person answering your support and doing your customer success. If somebody calls in about a password reset, you may never make it to that person. It may just happen really fast. But to the degree possible, we look at those support interactions as an opportunity to build a success pattern. So,
love that. I mean, the way you're describing it, I'm thinking as long as the process of changing would become so painful compared to the simply the level of support you're getting on a day-to-day right now, people are just going to stick. And then on top of that, obviously, you want to add to the quality of the relationship, the value that you provide. But again, being reactive, making sure that they get the best service possible during the engagement makes them stay. I like your style, Josh. So I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball question at you now, if you don't mind. What's your guys' number one challenge right now? What is the one node that you're trying to crack that once you crack, you're going to take the whole thing to the next level? What would that be for you?
I mean, I think like a lot of folks, we're coordinating, integrating AI into our business across a lot of different fronts, right? So everything from how do we accelerate feature development to how do we intelligently embed this into our support processes in a way that we don't lose the human touch that differentiates us. I talked about having the Sherpa that is with you from implementation all the way through your customer journey. We don't want to lose some of those pieces, but we want to be able to reduce the cost of delivery so that we can stay competitive in inspections, audits, compliance, work orders, and facilities management is a cost competitive business. You're a cost center. And so you have to be able to, you're trying to maximize value while you keep your costs low. And so from, executive level of trying to figure out how do we integrate AI into supporting business decisions, to BD in terms of looking for commonalities across customers, to customer support. How do we surface information for customer success and customer support agents that's more relevant to the problem that the customer's having in real time, or potentially surface it directly to them? There are a whole bunch of things that, especially for our business, I think a lot of people think of AI, it's ChatGPT and Claude and things like that. But in terms of being able to embed AI into offline workflows, we have a lot of customers that do not have persistent internet access. And so if what you're doing with AI only works when you're connected, you are going to stumble. And so trying to surface that elegantly in a way that enables the customer to get to success. There's also challenges around training libraries and things like that because of kind of the very specific nature of what we're doing. So I think that being able to get there in the timeline, I've been in technology for a long time, and this is the fastest pace of innovation I've ever seen. I do think that your smaller firms, this is a real opportunity to take market space because you've always been lean and trying to take advantage of being more nimble than the big guys. But there's a lot of pressure to get there in a timeline that is both reasonable, takes customer safety into account. We've got a lot of public sector customers. You got to be careful about what you do from a policy standpoint and compliance standpoint. And they have their own policies and compliance that they have to deal with. But we have to thread the needle between, what's safe and compliant and what the market really needs in order to meet the mission, which is, changing for customers really fast.
Josh Millsapps, sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, Josh, so that was an absolute masterclass. I loved it. Loved the section on speed specifically. If people want to find out more about you, see what you guys do, where should they go?
MBAoutcome.com, MBA like the degree, outcome like what we deliver for our customers, all one word. You can find everything about the services we provide, the solutions that we have out there, software. It's all in one place.
Let me tell you this, but I'm sure you've heard that already. This is a smart positioning. I like it. And for what I'm concerned, I can say one thing for sure is that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview. Me, I've just added you. Josh, thank you so much for coming on the Principal Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you've learned valuable lessons and strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.